You know, the standard American diet, I always say, has a great acronym to represent it. Standard American diet, SAD, right?
Hey, are you a foodie and you also love Jesus? Well, this episode is for you.
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Welcome to LED Live. Thank you so much for watching. This is the show where we use the light of Christ to expose the darkness found in media and our culture today. And today we're really pleased to have Karen and Danique on the show. Danique actually volunteered with Little Light Studios a few years back.
That's right.
We're really happy to have you back with us. Karen, before we get into this topic, which I'm really excited about because it's like the health and gospel connection, I'd just like you to share, what is it that you do?
Actually, I'm a cooking class instructor right now, but let's put it before that, I'm actually a missionary. I'm a medical missionary, and I do cooking class at the Wildwood Lifestyle Center. It's actually in Georgia, North Georgia, kind of close to Chattanooga. But I take this message through cooking and transitioning to a healthier way of life all over the nation. I've done worldwide programs. But what it is I've actually studied nutrition. I have a certificate in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University's Center for Nutritional Studies. I've also done a culinary program, the Ruby International Cooking School. So I've graduated with that in plant-based nutrition. They had a special program called Forks Over Knives, which many people have seen the documentary.
Excellent documentary.
So since they have, I did that so it kind of specialized what I do and be able to be more relevant to people who are looking to go more plant-based. So, yeah.
And the plant-based industry has come a very long way from like bland and tasteless to actually delicious.
Seriously. You know, it's funny. I grew up a vegetarian, and we were actually like a lacto-ovo vegetarian family. So we ate eggs and we had cheese. Okay, I was going to say, yeah, lacto-ovo, meaning that we incorporated dairy products and egg into our diet. But it's funny because growing up, we were like the weird family on the block because we didn't, and so some of the things that we would eat back then, some of these like meat replacements and things like that were just like odd to everybody. And they really weren't that good. I can tell you that soy milk, even just soy milk, has come a long way. When I was a young child, they had something called Soyagen, and it was like a powdered mix that they mixed with water. It was the worst tasting thing. Like I used to like cry, like, please don't make me drink this. It was so bad. And then it was funny because my husband had the same experience growing up because he's had it before as well. And we laugh because now there's so many alternatives. You know, we have like plant-based milks and people have just embraced realizing that we have such a way to treat our bodies so much better and be healthier and live not only a longer life, but a more quality life.
Fantastic.
Right? So,
and Danique, how are you involved in this work?
Yeah, so after how long was it, Keith, that I was here? 1 year from the Netherlands, where I'm from, and then 1 year, year and a half or so here.
Yeah, 1 or 2 years, yeah.
Something like that. So I helped out around here a lot. And after that, God opened the door for me to work for Wildwood Health Institute, which is where I'm at now. And I work in the media department, and we started a YouTube channel called DIY Health. Yeah. And so I'm her camera operator, and I'm an athlete. I run a lot, I lap swim a lot, and I'm now going to have my own show on DIY Health called The Plant-Based Athlete, where we'll experiment with different dishes that are plant-based but have the right nutrients for an athlete. And so, for example, I can be like, hey, I'm running this race on Sunday morning, like a half marathon. What do I eat, right? And normally, yeah, exactly. And carb loading, how do you do it like in a plant-based way and it's still healthy and good for you? So we'll look at the nutrients of that, and then I'm gonna find a recipe online that has that in it and try it out. And even things like making your own protein powder, for example, I think would be really fun. So that's what I do, yeah.
So you mentioned DIY Health, and we have a cookbook here on the table.
There you go.
Because I was thinking, you mentioned all your different roles. Well, what does a cookbook have to do with editing and video and things like that? So if you could explain, what is DIY Health?
Yeah, so DIY Health is a YouTube channel where we have different shows. So we have our show that's the same name as this cookbook, Plant-Based Made Simple, which is Karen's show, where she makes super simple recipes, mostly from her cookbook actually, that just help you transition into a plant-based diet, right? Like, because, and you can explain later why a plant-based diet actually matters. And we have some other shows lined up, like about natural remedies, simple things you can do at home, even with this thing with COVID, like what can you do at home to boost your immune system? And we have a show lined up about depression and mental health and these kind of things. So DIY health stands for, things you can do at home yourself, simple remedies to just be a healthier person.
Amazing.
So,
You actually made a good point. Before we get into the gospel side of things, maybe Karen, you can answer this. Why does plant-based matter?
If we go back and we look at our anatomy, we can see that we are built as plant eaters. Now, a lot of times people all say to me, oh, but Karen, we have canine teeth, so we should be eating meat. The fact of the matter is I always say to them, look at a cat and look at you. Do you have teeth like a cat? Because a cat tears flesh and rips apart their food in the wild, right? We don't do that. We grind our food. Our anatomy is built for fiber. Even medical studies show that people that have a plant-based high fiber diet have a very little or no instances of colon cancer. Yet when people are heavy meat eaters and are not taking in a lot of fiber, what happens is that stuff gets kind of stuck in our colon, it kind of putrefies, it becomes cancerous, and then we have colon cancer.
And then they use plants to clean themselves out, like the prune juice
Exactly.
and all those things.
Well, that's true, but that's what they do. But if you see how we are even just physiologically set up, the fact is that we are made for a plant-based diet. And if we go in, and I know we're going to go into more of the gospel part of it, but if we look at the original diet that man had. Man had an original diet of the herbs of the field, the fruit of the tree, the nuts. These are things that this is how God made us. Now, do we eat meat as a society in a worldwide thing today? Yes. But there's kind of reasons why God allowed that into our diet. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later, probably. So.
I thought you were going to say something.
I like to get it really into the fundamentals. I mean, she said, plant-based diet guards against colon cancer. And she talked about, you eat a meat-based diet and, it putrefies in your system. And I like to go, well, why?
Why?
Well,
that's because
right?
we've
Let's
not,
talk about
okay,
why.
because if we're focusing on a meat-oriented meal with think American diet is a standard American diet.
I guess
meat and potatoes.
maybe I'm thinking more mechanics. Why? So,
Oh,
okay.
It doesn't get pushed out. How's that?
Right, it doesn't get pushed out.
That's what you
So,
want. Is that what you're looking for? You don't push it out.
The
We don't
human
have-
body
that's right.
is generally 98.6 degrees. So if something is sitting in the human body,
Sure.
it's just the analogy is like, well, take that piece of meat, leave it out in the hot sun all day. What's going to happen to it?
Of course.
It's going to
rot.
start to decay.
That's right.
And so it does the same thing in your own system because it's not moving along. And that creates alcohol, which then in turn causes the colon cancer.
Exactly.
So that's really what I was getting at.
All
For
right,
like
so
the
you
sake
want
of the
the
viewer,
scientific
it's
point
like,
of
yeah,
view.
let's get to the science. Like, why does that?
I'm so simplistic. Goes
we need
right
both.
for
I mean, that's
yeah.
the reason I eat a plant-based diet today. Is it's very scientific in my mind. I've seen a huge weight of evidence, and I think there's a lot of good documentaries out there that people can view these days to bolster that. One of the ones I seen recently was called Game Changers.
Yes, that's what
A little
the
bit of
athletes,
language
right?
in there, but yeah, almost the entire Tennessee Titans football team is on a plant-based diet.
Wow.
There's a reason for
And
That's right.
these are big guys, they're not lacking in muscle, they're not lacking in energy, and they've been playing well.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at their schedule, they've been doing quite well. They haven't won a Super Bowl in a while, but they're still playing at a high level and able to compete. So obviously their diet isn't impacting them in a negative way.
That's right.
Well, I'm going to add something even to that. Now, I'm not a huge football fan, but who was the quarterback for the Patriots for all those years?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Tom Brady is a
Mostly plant-based,
yes.
yeah.
So we're going to say that many people look at him and say, "Wow!" And at his age, and he's probably one of the oldest quarterbacks that has ever won a Super Bowl, and has been, So if you're looking at that from that athletic point, which Danique, you're going to be doing a whole show on that, which is kind of so cool. But looking at that, you're going to see that just like its quality of life, longevity, and all of that. So.
And recovery from
definitely.
a workout or something. The recovery, I understand, is much faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, like, as an athlete and as a runner and a lap swimmer, like, anytime I eat like cheese or something or eggs, I just feel kind of blah. Like, I feel really heavy in the stomach, because for a while, like, I was really trying to be plant-based. I'm not 100% plant-based yet, but I'm mostly plant-based, and I'm really wanting to really get there where I can fully be plant-based. And for a while, I was like, I did my research, like, what do I eat for on race day, right? Like for a half marathon or something. And I was like, well, you need protein. And people said boiled eggs. So I ate my boiled egg, but I just didn't feel good. It didn't sit well in my stomach. And then I decided, my last race, I decided to cut the egg and just go with plant-based protein. Like, I did peanut butter, for example, oats with peanut butter. Oats are really good for a pre-race breakfast because it turns into energy very quickly. And I just felt so much better. It just felt less heavy, less bloated. So I personally, from that experience, have noticed the difference in when it comes from an athletic point of view. But hey, I want to throw a curveball at you because you said something earlier about, because I think people will ask this question about that in the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, God gave them a plant-based diet, but then later on, he allowed them to eat meat after the flood. So maybe you can share something about that.
Well, we started out with this plant-based diet, and then actually when sin came into the picture, God actually added in some other vegetables and things of that. But then let's forward all the way to the flood. Now we're talking about like a time period where, if you know the story of Noah and his family, and that after 120 years of preaching, at the time when God was going to destroy the earth because it was so evil, he did have that family that was going to be saved. And everybody else was invited, but nobody accepted except the family, right? But they go on the ark, and we always think when you're a kid, oh, the animals came in 2 by 2. That's only half true. Do you want to know? Because the animals, the clean animals, or the ones that God ordained that they were clean animals, came in at sevens, right? And the others came in at 2, right? Of course, that was for reproduction, so they could populate the earth again with all these animals, but also 7 because they were out of vegetation. You think that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but they were on that boat way longer than that. Because, I mean, if it's going to rain straight for 40 days, 40 nights and cover the earth, how long is it going to take for that to all go away and then we have landmass again, right? So they're on the ark for all that time. Vegetation, they're going to run out of food. So there was a point where God allowed for that. That was the first reason. There's another reason too, longevity of man. It's sad that in just a short period of time, God felt like the earth is so wicked, and that I need to destroy it. Yet, of course, like I said, we had some people that were still faithful. But the fact is that when you live to 950 years, which if we think about Noah lived to 950 years. How that can, if you were a sinful person, how your generations would sinfully populate the earth. That God kind of, in his wisdom, allowed meat into the diet, which lowered our longevity. Our mortality rate went from 950 years, then to about 500 years, and all the way down to what the average person lives between 74 and 78 years now. That's about average. I mean, with a standard American diet or the diet that we see today, full of meat and all that, it could be lower than that too. But so it was another way that not only because there was no vegetation and they had to eat, but also too, it kind of shortened the lifespan so that we don't continue to perpetuate sin through our generations like that.
Well, God, when he gives us instructions, he doesn't just do it just because there's a reason behind it. And we're grateful that there is science to back up the instruction that he gave. But Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 is pretty clear. And God said, talking to Adam and Eve, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth. So they had the whole earth and every tree, in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. Can we talk about why, or what was the purpose or intention that God gave this instruction and how it's impacting our lives today? Or like, what was his, what's the word I'm looking for? Ideal for us. And can we still achieve that after you're saying that we went through this age of degradation and our diets changed, can we still achieve his ideal by following that Genesis account instruction?
Sure. Well, I think, we see, and going back to what you were saying about science and how you like the science of things, the fact is that when we adhere to God's original diet, that man's original diet, we see that our health improves. Now, I think that there's a lot of factors that we can incorporate into that, not just nutrition. I think nutrition is a huge part. If you're looking at statistically speaking, when we're talking about disease, and of course we know that disease came in after sin. I mean, so we understand that, we're no longer eating from the tree of life, that we don't have the Garden of Eden around us and God mingling with us like he did. However, when disease came in, most disease is lifestyle disease. We think of genetics like, maybe diabetes. Let's look at diabetes for a second. My grandmother was a diabetic. My mom was a diabetic. That means I need to be a diabetic. And the answer is that is not true. And I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. Let's not, sometimes there's some genetic things, maybe with a type 1 diabetic, a child born with something to that nature. But type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease.
So lifestyle disease, just for clarification, in case we have somebody watching.
Sure.
In other words, it's a disease that is caused by your lifestyle
That's
choices.
right.
It could be prevented and in many cases reversed if you change your course of action.
Absolutely. And most disease is lifestyle disease. Now we can have a genetic propensity, so that would trigger, our genes would be susceptible, but our lifestyle, and there's a great example. If you had a gun, is a gun dangerous? The answer, it's the only, it could be. That's right. That's kind of almost like a trick question. I don't mean to trick you out here, but a gun is not dangerous if it's sitting on the table, is it? The gun is only dangerous if it's loaded, right? Which our genes load the gun, right? However, our lifestyle is like pulling the trigger. And so that's when it becomes dangerous. And so when people understand that just because this could be heart diseases in your family or diabetes or whatever we're talking about, it doesn't necessarily mean if you adhere to a healthy lifestyle. The problem that we face is that we're raised in these families that, our habits are all formed with what, if you always did what you always have done, you'll always get what you always have gotten.
That's right.
And so you've learned these habits. So what we need to do is change our mindset to make better choices. And we can start small. That's the important thing. We can start small. So, but going back to the nutrition piece of it, I think that, an active lifestyle, exercising, drinking good water,
the New Start acronym.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's a great E for exercise. W for water. And water means drinking good water. We want to keep our bodies mostly water anyway, but it also means using water too externally. We don't need to necessarily think it has to just be internally as well, with things of that nature, hygiene and things like that. Then we've got S for sunshine. The vitamin D that we need comes from the sun, right? Then we have T, temperance. And people think temperance, staying away from the bad things, the drugs, the alcohol, the things like that. But temperance also means moderation in things that are good for us too. We need to have control of that, you know what I mean, in life. A for fresh air, right? So, and then R for rest. Rest is such an important piece of this. Our body needs time for recovery and restoration. And if we don't give our body that 7 to 8 hours. And, I always laugh when people say, I can live on 4 hours of sleep. Yeah, great. You might be able to function. I'm not well. That's right. Your eyelids are open kind of.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we think about our body needs time to recover.
That's right.
Repair and restore. And if you're not giving it that, then you are so susceptible to lifestyle disease.
Right.
So, and then of course, T ends it all. I think that those first 7 are so important in our habits of life, but T, trusting in a higher power or trusting in God, right? And when we trust in God, I think, and doing all those other things, it actually gives God permission to do the miracle in our life.
Yeah.
I mean, just being a plant-based vegetarian doesn't exonerate you from every disease.
No.
Right? And that's the thing.
In fact, the way I understand it, looking at the data, is that people who eat a plant-based diet, they still die of all the same diseases generally, but they live about 10 years longer with a better quality of life.
Exactly. Exactly. So it doesn't prevent us, doing all of those things isn't going to prevent us from dying, because nobody has lived forever, right? We can look at that and
That
say,
would have been nice.
Yeah, but the fact is that we can have a quality of life, but more importantly, not even just being here and functioning. I think also being clear of mind too.
Right.
We realize that the things that we're eating in these processed foods and all these things that we take in really kind of cloud us and give us, a distorted view. And sometimes, when we think about the Holy Spirit speaking to our heart, if we are so clouded, how are we going to hear that small voice, giving us that direction, that guidance, if we're so distracted because we can't concentrate?
That's right.
So it's just another aspect of looking at, healthy nutrition and just making, using health overall, a good health as a part of our walk with the Lord.
So something I just want to bring out is somewhat relevant for the times that we live in. I was talking to a pediatrician friend, and she told me for the first time she was having to prescribe vitamin D to children since COVID.
Yeah,
Because the parents were freaked out,
And they weren't
and they were
sending their
like,
kids out.
not even sending their kids outdoors.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Yes, I get you want to keep your kids safe, but you can still send them out in the yard to play. They still need that vitamin D. You still have to maintain the other things that are going on. So don't get so, I guess, throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing. Where you definitely want to stay safe during COVID, but it's important to still get your fresh air and your sunshine and those kind of things, and
Exactly.
do it as safe as you can.
I have three things here because you said so much important things. But the first was, I love how you said it's about a mindset change.
Sure.
In New Start, all the things that you listed, it's sort of like maintenance of this temple. And we do so with our cars, with our homes. We maintain all these different things. We need to take the time to maintain our bodies as well. Because what's the point to have a well-maintained house and car, but you're sick inside of it?
Exactly.
But I'd like you to be, the second thing is I'd like you to be a little bit more specific, because potato chips and Oreos are vegan,
I'm going to tell you, well, this is the interesting thing. You notice I have not referenced the word vegan.
Okay.
Okay. And there's a reason why. The cookbook that I wrote is called Plant-Based Made Simple. Now, growing up, the lifestyle that my family was vegetarian, but there was also the vegan lifestyle. And that's what I think the terminology that most people embrace. But I look at it in a different way, because the vegan lifestyle actually came from, the Far East religions. It starts there. And going as far back as thinking into reincarnation. They think about, okay, I believe in reincarnation, that if my mother dies, she can come back as a cow, right? So if she comes back as a cow and I end up with this cow and I eat this cow, what did I just do to my mom?
Ate your mom.
I ate my mom.
Right.
So originally, a lot of a vegan lifestyle came from that philosophy, that tradition. And then, of course, animal activism. Now, I'm going to tell you, Danique knows, am I like the biggest animal lover? I love animals. She's an animal lover. So I
Both cat mothers.
That's right, we're moms to cats. But we, I love any animal.
But you're not marching for PETA. Is
No,
what you're saying.
exactly. And you know what? And the fact is that the point is that there's more to a plant-based lifestyle. Now, a plant-based lifestyle, there's some differences between a vegan lifestyle. The first is, I'll use an easy one, honey.
Yeah.
Vegans don't eat honey. And the reason why is because they feel like the bees are being exploited, okay? Or abused or whatever. I don't know the completely, but that's their thought process. Whereas I look at the Bible and I say, there's so many references to honey. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. The land of milk and honey. There's a lot of references. So as biblically speaking, I'm like, okay, I buy my own honey locally. I do local honey. Like I'll go to the farmer's market in Chattanooga. You can get honey there. But I also add, nutritionally speaking, I think it's a better way to go with like a local raw honey anyway, because you can ask them what they feed their bees, because bees eat honey. But commercial honey makers are honey, providers are not going to sell the profit or give the profits to the bees. They're going to feed the bees sugar, water, high fructose corn syrup, things of that nature. And believe it or not, they get their little tentacles in that, and then they kind of deposit the honey in the cell, and they're bringing some of that high fructose corn syrup into that. So that's why I like to buy local honey. just because I also think that somebody who locally is providing this honey is probably caring for their little bees better anyway, right? So that's one of the reasons. Also, the philosophy with a vegan lifestyle is nothing animal product. We're talking about leather, no leather belt, no leather shoes, no
Makeup,
you know, anything that's been
Yeah.
tested on animals. And again,
Right.
like I said, I'm not looking to abuse animals, but my focus on the plant-based lifestyle
Yeah,
is
and you should add that whole food plant-based,
whole
right?
food,
Yeah.
yes, and whole food plant-based is really the way that we should go. The book that I wrote is probably, I call it 93% whole food plant-based. The reason why is I do have a couple things in there, like something as simple as adding maybe some olive oil to something. Olive oil is not a whole food. And
Right.
what a whole food
It's a
is that,
processed food.
that's right, it's
Yeah.
processed. They've
Yeah.
taken the oil away from the olive
Olives,
itself.
right.
So because I've added a couple things in there, maybe some tofu in a couple recipes, that I didn't want to call it whole food plant-based made simple, because then people would say, that's not all whole food. And I knew it was going to be backlash. So I just did plant-based made simple, but it's like a 90 plus percent, 95% whole food plant-based cookbook.
Wonderful. Okay, so plant-based. not
Yeah,
vegan.
so that's plant-based. So you said vegan, but anyway, so
Right. No, but you answered the question because you were specific, because people are like, wow, I'm vegan or plant-based.
Sure.
I'm
Oh, but
eating
the
all these
nutrition
things.
piece,
Right,
again-
but I still get all these diseases as a meat eater. So what's the point?
well, think of this. This is when you brought. I should really bring it back to what you originally said. Oreos, potato chips are vegan. Okay. Yes, I'll say they're vegan, but are they healthy? And that's
right.
really where Danique brought in the whole food piece.
Right, right.
Vegans take animal products out, but they don't necessarily put in healthy foods as a thing. We need to balance our diet. Our diet needs to have protein, carbohydrates, fats, healthy though. When we take something out, you can take out, scrambled eggs and put Oreos in for breakfast is not going to fulfill the body's need. You know what I mean? So
It's tasty, but it's not going to get you anywhere.
Exactly, exactly.
I would not eat that before a race.
No, good call.
Okay, so the third thing was you made mention of the Holy Spirit's communication with us, and how depending on what we put in, it might cloud that connection. How about we segue into the gospel aspect of this ministry?
Sure.
Can we, before we do that,
Okay.
let's get into the physiological, like, why does
science
it cloud?
over here.
Like,
Let's do it.
Okay.
I mean, because I think if you're going to tell people that, it's important to have a reason to back it up.
Okay.
So in my mind, it's like, well, why does your brain get clouded? Okay. It's about blood flow and circulation, right? And so if there's too much fat in your blood, it's going to slow down the movement of blood in your system, right? And as the blood carries the oxygen, it's slowing the carry of oxygen to your brain, to your tissues, to your organs, to everywhere in your body. So by eating a plant-based diet, you're minimizing that. It's like plumbing, right? You don't want any clogs in the system. So you're minimizing that so that you can maximize blood flow, right? So I give you like a real world example. So like cardiovascular disease, right? So what's happening? What's happening is you have arteries that your blood goes through. And over time, when you eat a non-whole food, plant-based diet, when you eat the opposite of that, a meat-based diet, you start to develop what's called atherosclerosis, okay, which is the hardening of the arteries. And you can think of it like your artery doing this, right? It's shrinking. Why is it shrinking? Because internally it's being built up on the interior arterial wall, that plaque, and it's building up, and so it's shrinking the amount of blood flow that can go through as well. So not only do you have the extra fat in the blood, you have the shrinking of the arterial wall, okay? So it's like trying to push now through your system. That's your heart, because it's that pump, and it's having to work extra hard, right? You're disrupting the flow of nitrous oxide through the arterial wall. And that's what keeps your arteries, for lack of a better term, like supple. It's like free flowing and able to move and not rigid, right? So as you build up that plaque, it prevents the flow of nitrous oxide. And so you got multiple things that start happening or going on and making it difficult. So why is your brain clouded? Because you're not getting any oxygen,
Exactly.
right? And that's what it's really about. You got to get that oxygen to your brain and the rest of your body. Otherwise, you're having a hard time thinking. And then you compound the problem by taking something like an Excedrin, right?
Yeah.
Well, what does Excedrin do? Well, it has caffeine. What does caffeine do? It's a vasodilator, right? So it's going to open up that artery, but then when you're off of it, because it's a drug, your artery is going to clamp down on you and say, I need more of that, right? So that's the physiology.
Exactly.
And I think that the beautiful thing about all of this is, I believe it was Aristotle who said, let food be thy medicine, is that if you suffer from
Was
these
it? Yeah, I think it was
diseases,
Hippocrates.
if you suffer from these diseases, that by changing your lifestyle, you can still reverse most of it. So like at the place where we work at, Wildwood Health Institute, we have three things basically. We have a store, a natural food store. We have a lifestyle center, and we have what's called a Center for Health Evangelism, which is the gospel aspect we'll go into, where people get training in how to use health to reach souls for Jesus. But at the lifestyle center, people come, and we have physicians and everything, and they teach them like, hey, you need to do this and this and this and this to reverse your lifestyle. So we have people walking, put them on a plant-based diet, drink water, get the sunlight. And there's literally people who come off their medicine by just reversing their lifestyle. So, and people go home and they keep living that lifestyle and become healthy people. And when you're healthy, let's be honest, you're happy. You're miserable when you can hardly walk because you either have joint problems or you're overweight, or you're miserable because you just feel sick. And these people become healthy people.
So let's talk about some resources, because to some people this might sound like crazy. Like, what you mean? You're telling me
A bunch of hippies.
I can get rid of my type 2 diabetes? Like, I've had a stroke, I've had a heart attack, I've had, all these things. Like, you mean to tell me that I don't have to deal with that anymore? What's some resources that you've read? I mean, I can name some off the top of my head, but do you have any books that you would recommend or something, so people can read up on this and just say, yeah, I want to check that out? Like,
The
what
China
are people?
study.
Yeah.
Okay, the China study
would be a wonderful one.
What's another one?
Thinking,
I'll throw out one. PCRM.org. That's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.
Okay.
Let's see.
Forks Over Knives, the documentary.
Forks Over Knives,
that's
the
a great
documentary.
documentary.
Anything by Dr. Neil Bernard.
Yes.
How to Reverse and Prevent Heart Disease by
Dr. DeRose, right?
It's Esselstyn.
Oh, it's Esselstyn.
Caldwell
Yeah,
Esselstyn.
Caldwell Esselstyn.
How Not to Die.
How Not to Die.
Yep.
Okay, I forget that
another
guy's
one.
name. I haven't read his book.
Yeah.
And then
know
there's
his
one
name.
about reversing diabetes. I cannot remember. Reversing blood pressure. And that's
Okay.
by Dr.
David DeRose.
David DeRose, yes.
Yeah. And I think he co-authored that with somebody I know.
Yeah.
And I would even want to reference Dr. Neil Nedley's books.
Okay.
Because he applies a lot of these lifestyle
Mental health,
principles to mental health, depression and anxiety.
Exactly.
That even if you have some conditions such as genetic conditions, or if you had a bad childhood growing up, he calls it I forget what he calls it, but like a trigger basically, that even then, if you apply all these principles, you can reverse your mental illness.
So the genetic thing, just to give the audience a little bit more, that's one of the things when I read the China study, it really came out in my mind is you can use food to turn genes on and off.
Yep.
They're like switches. And so that becomes huge in your personal experience. You're like, what? I can actually turn the gene off that does X, Y, or Z. Yeah, you can do that because it's been turned on by your choices. So now you can turn it off by your choices. So China Study, highly recommend that book. I would say it's the most, outside of a religious book, that is the single most influential book I have ever read.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have any facilities or institutions where people can call for support in
Well,
this?
we were talking about the institution at Wildwood in Georgia.
Yeah.
It is we'll look at the piece of, before we go into the health evangelism piece of it, the Lifestyle Center itself. I happen to be the cooking class instructor there at the Lifestyle Center. So I see guests come, and they have an 11-day and a 25-day program. But I see in 11 days somebody coming in with type 2 diabetes. We're talking about sometimes 10, 20 years worth of diabetes, insulin pumps. I mean, not just oral medications, not monitored with diet and exercise, but completely, right now dependent on this insulin to balance their life, right? And within 11 days, off medications. And I mean, and they'll tell you, their doctors say once a diabetic, always a diabetic. Physicians, who don't study plant-based nutrition and lifestyle health.
Lifestyle medicine.
Lifestyle medicine, I should say. Do not have the exposure or the resources to understand this. You know, I know that I tell the class when I teach them that, you know, your physician most of the time has had 8 hours of nutrition.
Exactly.
8 hours of nutrition. And I verify this with doctors who come in and speak, you know, so I can validate this. And then some study more. And of course, there are doctors that take this as a you know, and hold on to it and go and study more and understand more lifestyle treatment. But the fact is that, you know, they're not educated in this. So their medicine is the way to go. And if not, you're a quack in a way.
And now one more question. Those same people, when they're coming in, are they skeptical about this food you're making? They're like, man, this lady's making some food. It's probably going to taste terrible.
Well, this is the thing. And that's pretty funny that you say that. You know, the philosophy and why I wrote the cookbook was to transition people to a healthier way of life. But I have a catchphrase: simple, nutritious, and delicious. Okay. Simple, meaning simple foods, simply prepared, whole food, plant-based, and easy, because I am not complicated. Trust me. I don't want to be in the kitchen all day. I don't have time for that. My life is busy. I'm doing lots of things. And so simply prepared, simple foods. Nutritious, right in the middle, crux of the matter. We want healthy food. We want to be putting in healthy, and then delicious. If it's not good.
Simple, like I can get all the ingredients at Walmart.
Almost everything.
Almost
in this cookbook, I'm going to tell you that if you had to go to a Whole Foods once every 3 or 4 months,
or
that
you
would
just
be
go
a
on
lot.
Amazon and you order.
Or that's
Prime,
me, and that's me.
know?
I just go on Amazon and buy. There's a couple little things in here that just
Unique
enhance
ingredients.
things. Yes, you know, a unique ingredient, like something that when I'm doing things that have an egg flavor.
Like black salt or something.
Yeah, the kalanomic, which is an Indian black salt. You can't find that in the Walmart.
It smells and tastes like egg.
It really does, right, Denise? We've had it before.
But you can get it at Trader Joe's.
You can. Trader Joe's has it.
I got it on Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it anywhere, like any of those types of things.
Okay.
Couple ingredients, but for the most part, 98% of the ingredients is right in the Walmart. You know?
I think that's one of the biggest barriers for people, and that's what I'm always like harping on when I help out with this kind of stuff is like, look, there's already a wall here. You're asking, you have to remove barriers for people to make it easy for them because they're already resistant to it.
Sure.
You know, so you have to remove those barriers. Otherwise, it's going to be too hard and they're not going to stick with it and they're just going to go back to the way they were used to doing things. And that's not going to help them.
I did a cooking school for a place in Florida that was very low socioeconomic situation. And I really needed to be conscious about these people can't afford to just, even sometimes Walmart is going to be too much for them. We're talking about very, very poor. I literally bought almost everything in the dollar store. And to change them to a healthier way. Now, would I tell you that was the healthiest way? Well, no, we're always room for growth. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I really try to, in my own home, use organics when I can, organic foods when I can, and more, non-genetically modified, things like that. But that's a whole different subject.
Sure.
But to bring people to a healthier way, we have to baby steps. Nothing is 0 to 100. And going to be maintained.
Even just meat to a vegetarian diet is a huge step forward.
Well, that's what I mean. And so I did that whole thing, that whole cooking school, and I literally bought almost everything in the dollar store. I mean, not the fresh fruits and vegetables, obviously, but anything, coconut milk you can get there. Himalayan pink salt I could get there. Oats I could get there. You know what I mean? So there was things that you could do. So everybody can make a step toward healthier.
Yeah, it's all about choices.
Exactly.
I walk into a gas station and I see a candy rack, but I don't know if you've ever seen, there's like bananas and apples on a rack as well.
Sure.
You can get a bunch for $1.
Or you could buy the Snickers bar or whatever it is.
Exactly,
You know what I
which
mean?
is probably $1.50. So it's like, okay, which one do you want to go with?
So back to your question.
Wait, before now, I have something to pause
I got more questions.
Another barrier might be someone might be hesitant about the qualifications of the people in the lifestyle center. So coming from the doctor's perspective, they may only have 8 hours of health, right? Health education.
Sure.
But from the lifestyle educator's perspective, how much medical experience do they have, and are they qualified to take in someone who has a severe disease?
Absolutely. We have, our providers are physicians, okay, who have concentrated outside their normal training on lifestyle medicine.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So they are now, they're regular doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs. We have mental health professionals that are certified and licensed, So all of our providers are credentialed.
So they're
And they see
monitoring
both
their
sides.
current
Oh yeah,
medications.
so they have
and-
exactly. It's not about okay, you're coming here, we're taking you all off your
Yeah.
medication. The goal is to go to a more natural thing,
Yeah.
and to be off your medication is going to give you clarity of mind.
You
It's
bet.
going to give you, we know that medication is not, there's so many things that are when it's. And it's not, the fact of the matter is medicine does not make you healthy. No one here can take a medicine, a pill, a magic pill or a miracle pill, let's call it. I don't like to call it magic, but miracle pill that's going to make you better. It may help there. And listen, I value modern medicine because I think there's a need for it. We have to see a doctor many times for different reasons. But the fact is that the medicine itself is not going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
We have to assess what the problem is, what is causing this problem, and then we need to reverse that thought process and reevaluate and do things differently.
You have to go back to the core, because otherwise it's kind of like you have a wound and you just slap a Band-Aid on and you just keep putting a new Band-Aid on. But instead, if you just clean it up, and yeah, it might hurt a little bit, but then the problem is gone. And that's how this is seen.
Sure.
And like Karen said, like it's not, our physicians are not against conventional medicine.
That's right.
It's more like, if we can get you off of it and give you a healthier, better lifestyle that makes you a lot happier, then let's take that route.
Sure.
So.
What was I going to say? Something about, well, I can just add that, I've seen, where I keep referencing diabetes only because I think it's such an epidemic, and I think it's something that is an easy way to really illustrate what we're talking about. If somebody becomes a diabetic through their lifestyle, right, the doctor immediately will give them a pill. Now, the pill will help regulate their blood sugar, but does that pill ever fix their diabetes?
No, it
And
doesn't.
that's the thing with medications. Medications never fix the problem. They may be life-saving. And I'm not going to say that they're not. Sometimes we need to, if your blood pressure is, 210 over 190, you need to take something. I mean, putting you on a plant-based diet, and is going to take time, and that's not going to be the answer for the person that is going to have a stroke in any minute now.
Yeah.
What we need to do is address that problem. That's where I believe like our modern day allopathic medicine really it comes in to where we could utilize this. But then taking that person and giving them a lifestyle change will fix that problem permanently. You know what I mean? As long as they haven't done irreversible damage. We can sometimes go so far as to sometimes things can't be reversed.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we can address things and have that quality of life that we're talking about.
If the average person isn't born on the verge of having a stroke, it's something that takes time, and it will take time to reverse it. So that's something we should keep in mind. Okay,
Absolutely.
now
All right.
we can
Go back
into
to our questions.
How did I pose it the last time? As the Holy Spirit is trying to communicate with us, and what is the health gospel connection?
Sure. Well, Danique had mentioned about, people, nobody wants to hurt, nobody wants to be in pain. You don't want to suffer, right? I believe that Jesus, if we look at how Jesus ministered to people, he ministered in a way where he went and met the people, didn't he? He wasn't sitting around and people were looking for him all the time, but he was always moving. He was always trying, he was always meeting the people. And what he did was how he resonated with them. He got to know them. He got to know their needs. They were suffering. If you look in the Bible, there's more accounts documented of Jesus healing than Jesus preaching.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Right? So if we look at that, we see here that he was relieving suffering, right? Because the world is suffering, right? So he would get to know them. He would meet their needs. And what that would do would be relieve them from their pain and suffering and build their confidence in him, knowing that, wow, I trust this guy. He really cares about me. They knew he cared. And then when they knew he cared, he was able to open up and say, hey, I have a better way. Let me show you, right?
Yeah. So as a videographer at Wildwood, for years I did the testimonies of the guests. The residential program, the guests came through, and pretty much all of them, what they said that they found was the biggest blessing is that they had a closer walk with Jesus, because we have a chaplain in the lifestyle center, and so they might be struggling with some spiritual things, and it's really when you take care of someone's physical needs and someone's been suffering from something for their entire life, and you show them look, I'm going to do these treatments on you, and they're simple, and I'm going to teach you how to do it yourself. And they notice the results. They feel loved and cared for. And in you, as that person doing that, they see Jesus. They're like, wow. And that's when barriers and walls are broken down, and they can start up that relationship with God again. And that's why it's so powerful. And also, especially if you're in a country where, like Europe or something. I went on a mission trip to Iceland 2 years ago, and people there are so anti-religion. They're so it's so secular, and it's like, I don't need this kind of stuff. But let's just say someone is ill, and you take care of that person's physical needs. All of a sudden, you have an opening wedge for the gospel, because they're like, hey, tell me more about you and your faith, and all of those things. It's so powerful.
And a lot of times they're seeing you working. I'm sure you've experienced this, and they're like, "Why are you so happy? Why is there a smile on your face?"
Exactly.
I'm going to say that they do graduation every 2 weeks. It was like after the 11-day program, every other Wednesday. And I'll go to the graduations because obviously I've really built relationships with the guests at the thing, teaching them about cooking and bringing this home. Because if somebody's feeding them there, they have we have a diet kitchen who's preparing these foods. But they have to know that when they go home, not only can this food, that they want to continue this lifestyle because they feel better, everything is better about their life, but they want to incorporate their family, their friends, the people they love, to an understanding of a better way of life, right? And they have to also meet the needs, because not everybody's always on board with change, And so I get this relationship with them. When I go there, the one thing that I'm going to tell you that every person says is, I've never been to a place where more people are so loving, so happy, so friendly, so everything. Like they've never, and prayer is a big part of it. We make sure that we pray with our guests all the time. In everything we do, we really let God lead that as that part of that experience for them, and it really opens up the door.
And I see why this is important and how it's holistic, because that's the moment where the practice meets the purpose. Like, what are we doing this for?
Exactly.
And when you introduce Jesus and that spiritual lifestyle change, it's a complete package.
Let me just interrupt you, but interject one thing before I forget, because that's me, I'll forget. The interesting thing is that when you said holistic, we address the physical, the mental, the emotional, and most importantly, the spiritual. Because there's healing in all four of those. You may leave, and you reference the fact that just because you have a good, healthy lifestyle doesn't mean you're going to be exempt from disease. It may just give you a quality of life and a longer life. But the fact is that not everybody has a miracle in their life where they're healed physically. Not everybody. But maybe they're healed emotionally and mentally.
That's right.
But the most important thing, I think, of all of this is the spiritual health. And that's what Danique said when she interviewed those guests, that every one of them was like, I have a new relationship with, or a renewed relationship with Jesus. Another walk, another dimension of this, building this relationship. And so, I think that really is what it's all about, the holistic approach. We are addressing, we had people come in to Lifestyle Center a few years back that had alcohol and drug issues, and kind of had been through millions of rehabs. And so we were doing a walk one day, and I was walking with the wife of, the guy there. And I said, what is different about here than the rehabs that you go? And that's exactly what she said. You're addressing everything in our life. You're not just focusing on our drug dependency or our alcohol issues. You're addressing everything, and the difference is the world.
Getting to the root.
And so, and that's really why I think we see such a wonderful, results in the program, even in 11 days. So.
I think just to distill that down into one thought is that really the gospel is about restoration.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's about the restoration of the whole person. That's why in the Bible, when you read that Jesus healed somebody, that same word in the Greek many times is the word for salvation. In fact, I think it's used more for salvation than it uses the term for healing. The word is sozo. And I like how it reads in Psalm 103. It says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name." And you can see how all these things are connected. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies. And then what do we get from all of that? Who satisfies your mouth with good things so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. You can really see in that passage like the entire restoration of man. This is what God came to do. Sin destroyed us, and God is here to redeem us. And that's really what living a healthy lifestyle and helping people live a healthy lifestyle is all about. It's all about restoring people back into the image of God.
Yeah.
Especially back in the image of how he made us in the Garden of Eden.
So for someone who likes food, and they also
Back
love
to the food again.
right, who loves Jesus, and they understand that we are all called to be missionaries, right?
Yes.
We can have our careers and all of that, but we should always be seeking opportunities to share the love of Jesus Christ. How can someone who loves food and also Jesus merge the two and be a missionary for Christ?
Well, that I have an interesting story. Many years ago, I was at a camp meeting, and there was a chef educator there. His name was Julio Barillas, okay? And Julio brought a message of health through food. And I took his class because it was like an afternoon health seminar. And I'm like, okay, I'll take this, right? And I was in just how he presented, not only just being able to use health as an entering wedge to your community, but how he presented it in just a lighthearted way and made foods that were delicious. And I'm like, wow, this is like so interesting how you could do that. Now we fast forward, and we were having a health seminar at our church. And I said, you know what we need to do? We need to have some kind of cooking class, right? So I was on the team for the Evangelism program, right? And so I told them, I said, I think after this doctor came, Dr. Tim Riesenberger came, I said, we need to do a health, some kind of a cooking class right after, because I really learned about a cycle of evangelism, not just do an event. Yes, we can excite the community, but if we just leave it there, then what happens? Well, they forget about it. We get excited and then we forget about it. We get excited, we get forget about it. So we needed to continue the momentum. If they're excited about what they're learning about lifestyle health, we need to do this cooking class. Everybody was in agreement. So I said, so who's going to do it? Beep. It was like, we were in the ER and the machine, the heart stops, the machine goes, right? I was like, okay, really? No. And everybody's really excited, pumped up. I'm like, we got to do this. They're like, yeah, who's going to do it?
Crickets.
After like 3 times that, I was like, okay, I'll do it. Now, I had no experience. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I had a desire. And that is what I believe. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.
Amen.
Called. So I said, I'll do it. I put together a 4-night cooking school that we were able to do. And we had like 135 people at the health program. And I said, Lord, I can't handle a lot of people. I said, let's get 25 people. So I made it a point. I said, Lord, I want 25 people. So it was funny because I had, at the end of the seminar, they said, if you want to continue learning about health, we're going to do this cooking school. And it was announced and people came and registered. I had 23 people. Nice. I'm like, well, Lord, thank you. That was, close. I'm like, okay, I think I can do this, right? But the first night, so many people said, can I bring a friend? Can I bring someone? I had 27. So I was like, oh, Lord, you gave me over our idea. But it ended up that it was such a blessing that I said, you know what? This is a way I can minister to my community, teaching them about better health. I think that, a lot of times people think that they need to go out and represent Jesus by hitting people over the head with the Bible, knocking on their door and giving them materials and saying, this is, you need to change your, I think that we need to address where people, we have to sympathize with people.
Where they're at.
Where they're at, that's right. And I'm not saying that we can't hand out some materials and that people's lives could be changed for the kingdom. Absolutely. You can hand out a little track or whatever, and that could happen. But that's not how Jesus ministered. And if we're looking for true success, if we call ourselves Christians, it's because we are Christ-like. That means that we want to do as Christ did. So if he ministered in this way where he met the people and met their needs and brought them to a better way, built the confidence, built that friendship, and then showed them a better way, I think that that's how we can reach people. And I really believe that when people feel better, they are so much more receptive.
So you gave, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it goes back to that saying, you know, people don't, how's it go?
Yeah, I know.
They don't
care how much you know until you know how much you care.
Exactly.
And that is true. You know, there's a philosophy that a lot of people embrace, and they say, you know, oh, if a man's hungry, you know, you can give him a fish and he'll eat once, but if you could teach him to fish, right? I don't think that that's 100% true.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I think, and my husband and I talk about this all the time, and it really was him who brought this to my attention, and I really agreed. You know, if somebody's hungry, if any of you are hungry, can you concentrate
on the instructions
on how to right?
Yeah.
The fact is you're
That's
not meeting the immediate need.
Right.
We need to do both. We need to feed that person and then teach them how to fish.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with that. Don't just give them the fish,
Right.
teach them to fish. I said don't give them the fish, but then teach them to fish.
Yeah.
And so I think what we need to do is go out there. And when I do cooking schools, there is never a time that I don't give samples out.
Yeah.
And actually, I brought samples for all of you. Just so
great.
you know.
Okay.
So you guys can go ahead and
give our
try
honest
them.
opinion later.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
But I think that I think people have to see, and that things have to resonate with you. You know, you're not going to make a change if it doesn't, you know, if something tastes like cardboard, like in the food realm, you know, nobody's going to eat it.
Yeah,
it's going to take about
mess
a
with the
week
trust.
before. Yeah, there you go. It's going to mess with the trust. Do I really care? God gave us taste buds. He didn't say, he didn't just, everything doesn't have to taste like cardboard, right? He gave us taste buds for a reason. We want to desire food, but we want to desire, and we can change our taste buds. You know, the standard American diet, I always say, has a great acronym to represent it.
SAD.
Standard American diet, SAD, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But I like to tell people that we should have a glad diet.
Yeah.
And it's God's living abundant diet.
Amen.
And so
There you
that's how we kind of transition into you know, really not only enjoying the change and the journey, but also growing closer to Christ because we're following in his
Well, you
footsteps.
gave an example about the cooking school, right? But I know myself, so I want to address the introverts who may be watching this, because that's pretty big. But Jesus is so like effective, and he did the whole spectrum, because he was in the temple, he was in the community, but he also asked Zacchaeus to lunch.
That's right. The
So
personal.
if you know someone, a friend, someone in your community, you can just invite them over for a meal. And explain to them how you made it. Maybe don't tell them even it's plant-based at first. Have them taste it.
Listen, you can make good food taste, you know, and good healthy food
Right.
taste good without even having to address it.
Right.
And go ahead. I was just going to say, to give you an example of that, like Keith and I go to the same church, and I was really blessed by this recently. Our church does like 5 health programs throughout the year for our community. And the one I help out with personally is depression, anxiety, recovery. I'm really passionate about that, and I help out with that. But there was one, I think it was Best Way, which is Best Way, like WEIGH, but like the better way, you know. They had, I guess, graduated from the program, and the people who were running the program had invited some of the people to come and share their testimony about it. And one person said that she actually wanted to start attending a church now.
Wow.
And it was amazing. I was like, this actually works, because it's also friendship evangelism.
That's right.
That's right.
It is a whole program, but you also have an individual connection with people. So I think people can do it through their own church, you know, figure out a program to run, like a cooking school, a weight loss program. Obviously, with our weight loss program and our depression, anxiety recovery program, and some of these other programs, we do have some physicians involved to monitor people. But like my mother, she was a missionary in Mozambique, and now she's a missionary in Tanzania. And she told me stories in Mozambique where it was just people who were sick. They had some kind of a wound or something, and she knew to do some hydrotherapy, which is treatments with water, literally external water treatments that help them heal those wounds. And it was a one-on-one, very intimate connection there that then opened the door for her to maybe give Bible studies.
Building that trust.
And even here in the United States, you know, you can pray about this. I'm just going to share this plug here, but we do offer health evangelism courses. If you go to healthevangelism.com, there's an online course, and there we have courses on our campus where people can learn about how to do these kind of things. Massage, hydrotherapy, diet, all those things, that it's such an intimate and beautiful experience when you can help someone recover from an illness like that, and then the person like, can you please give me Bible studies? It's so powerful.
Beautiful.
I wanted to add something that you were saying that, like even like anybody can find their gift and to be able to reach people. I always use an example. Somebody had, my husband was teaching a class about how to outreach people. And the person was saying, I have a neighbor that moved in a couple months ago that has not, I've not met her. I think she does some drugs. I don't know what's going on there, something weird. But how do I reach her? So I had just taught a bread making class.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a saying that says there's a lot of religion in a good loaf of bread.
That's
than
right.
more religion in a good loaf of bread than many people think.
Yeah.
So, and I always ask people, what do you think that means? And this is what my husband said to this woman. She said, yesterday you made that loaf of bread with Karen. She's like, yes. He goes, why don't you go and knock on the door? Introduce yourself and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I live across the street and I'm so sorry I have not been here. I know you moved in a few months ago but I made this loaf of bread and it made me think I'd like to give it to you. And so I hope you enjoy it. That is a lot of religion in a good loaf of bread.
right.
It is an icebreaker. It is the entering wedge. Hey, it's about friendship. You've just now, and maybe she'll say thank you or no thank you. But the fact is that it gives that opportunity to break down that wall of prejudice, like, oh, the neighbor never came over. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that was nice. She thought about me. And it could open up a dialogue to show how much you care, and then that's how where we begin reaching people for
Here's
the
what you can
kingdom
do.
of God.
Well, don't just give her the bread, give it to her in a nice dish and be like, oh yeah, and return the dish whenever you're done.
Hey!
Just come back
There you
over.
go.
Yeah.
I think people make a lot of mistakes with themselves and with others when they're trying to go through this process. One of them is they're not patient with themselves. They feel like I need to go, just like you said earlier, from 0 to 100. It's little steps at a time.
That's right.
I've been doing this for 15 years now.
Sure.
And I didn't start out with from at 100. You start at 0. It's you're taking a few steps at a time and taking on what you can handle. And there's a lot of experimenting that goes on. And speaking of the experimenting, if you invite somebody over for dinner and you want them, and they're not used to eating that way, we always tell people, don't ask them, does it taste like X?
Of course.
That's right.
Don't ever do that. Because it's not.
You made a plant-based burger. Don't ask them if it tastes like their
hamburger?
McDonald's burger or
Unless
whatever.
it's the Impossible
You
Burger.
you ask them, do you like it? Does it taste good?
Yeah.
Because if it tastes good,
Doesn't
that's all that
matter.
really matters,
doesn't-
right?
it
Because you
doesn't matter.
liked it. And it doesn't matter if it tastes like X. So throw out a little revelation joke for you. People will oftentimes try to imitate something, that's meat-based.
Yeah.
With a plant-based version. So you tell people, it's not the beast, it's the image of the beast.
Nice.
Dude, that's great. I always tell people that same thing. I say, if you're going to, I always say, does anybody here like a veggie burger? And you get most of the people in the class will raise their hand. I'll say, does a veggie burger taste like a hamburger?
No.
Not one person will ever say it tastes like a
No.
hamburger. I say, but does it taste good?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, I'll say, could you have that veggie burger instead of a hamburger occasionally?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And that's really our mindset. That's about, changing our thought process.
That's right.
And so, I agree 100%. If you're because guess what? The veggie burger is never going to be the hamburger.
That's
it's
right.
not a
No.
It's not
hamburger.
supposed to
It can't be. Is anything ever going to be like the exact?
No.
It's a replica. It's a replacement. It's not the same. So I agree 100%. You can't say, do you like it? Does it taste like beef or whatever?
That is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, really, to be careful about the language that we use. Because if you're like, I had scrambled eggs for breakfast, and then you hand someone a plate of tofu, it's like, their mind was getting ready for the eggs. And it doesn't matter how similar you can get the tofu to taste like eggs. It's not eggs, So
right.
just
So
get
going
ready for
back
tofu,
to
good
the
tasting tofu.
being careful with people, my wife and I, we used to follow this chef. She was a raw food chef named Amber Shea. And she was kind of up and coming. She went to Matthew Kinney's 105 degrees Fahrenheit school and got her certification there. Came out with some stellar raw food stuff. So she was kind of close by to where we lived, and I had her make a dessert for my wife's birthday, and we met her at Whole Foods or something and sat down and chatted with her. She made some changes in her own life for health. She was having some real problems with something. And she went to her doctor. The doctor said, you need to start incorporating these things into your diet because you're having trouble with this area. And I think they were non-plant-based things. And she had a blog and she was posting about it. And people railed on her and hammered her to the point where she totally gave up, shut down her blog. She'd already come out with a cookbook that did really well. Stopped, I think, selling it. And she just like that community turned on me, then I'm done.
Wow.
So you have to be patient with people. You
That's
have to
right.
give them
Wow.
grace in whatever is going on in their life and just not rail on them. Like, you know, if somebody's starting out, don't be down on them because they're not where you are.
Yeah.
You know, give them space and time to grow, because at the end of the day, it's about, it's you know, talking about being a medical missionary, it's about reaching them for Christ.
Of course.
Not hammering them on what they're eating or not eating. And then just to get one more thing in, a tip I always tell people is an easy thing to start with, dessert.
Yeah.
Right? It's usually one of the most unhealthy parts of our meal.
That's right. And the
And
most
if
popular.
you can tweak that and give yourself something healthy instead, it's a great way to start making substitutions in your diet and making progress towards more healthy choices without, you know, necessarily committing all the way and saying, I don't know about this. You can try it and see if you like it. And it's a great way to experiment and improve your health at the same
Oh,
time.
totally.
I wanted to add to that because nothing about this is cookie cutter. You know,
No.
going
Oh.
back to the verse in Genesis chapter 1,
Wait, are you
we
doing a
have
food reference with cookie cutter?
Nice.
Very clever.
We have a variety. You know, those with joint problems actually should stay away from nightshades in the vegetable food group.
Yeah.
So yeah, to definitely be careful about how we approach people and, you know, not to attack or anything like that.
And every person physiologically is different. You know what I mean? So we have to, you know, when people come to me, they always have questions, and, you know, I address them on an individual basis. You know, I can generally talk about, you know, good health and making these changes, but specifically, that's a great point. Some people have an allergy to something, maybe soy. Well, soy is a wonderful plant-based protein. It's just really, it's got so many, you know, 8 of the 9 essential amino acids, you know, it's got like, it's great. However, what if you have a soy allergy? You know, I can't just say, well, just got to eat it anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, we address these things, nuts, things, you know, nightshades. There's so many things that we have to, so just because it's in that realm doesn't mean it works for everybody. And people have to move toward the goal. Again, we're always about moving toward the goal if it's in their, if they can do it, you know.
From my experience, the health message can be such a beautiful thing, but I've also met people who, like you said, they hit you over the head with it, and they kind of swerve to more extremism where it becomes pushy, and it's like, well, you don't do this. It's like, no. Let people be where they're at and encourage them in a Christ-like way to grow. But it's not something to attack them with. You know, like that's Jesus healed people because, like he said, he wanted to offer them salvation. And
It's all wrapped up in
didn't
love.
say,
Yeah.
do this and this and this and this, and didn't show them any love with
That's
it.
right.
Yeah, he wasn't like, you idiot, like what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
I told you.
Yeah. Don't you know how to treat your body?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Karen, I have to be honest with you. I've been looking at the picture on your
the
cookbook
cookbook?
here, and
Yeah,
I've been like salivating this whole time. But can you tell us where we can access this book?
Oh, actually, we've just recently put it on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
So if you were interested in getting the book, it's Plant-Based Made Simple by Karen Lynch, but my name is spelled Carin, Lynch, Lynch.
It's $20.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's
Amazon
20.
Prime, free shipping.
Yeah, free shipping.
And looking through this, it has some really good pictures, which is one of my beef with cookbooks, is when they don't have good pictures or no pictures at all. That is really frustrating. And you look here, it looks very simple, just like you're saying. The
It's
stuff you
literally the
need.
cookbook that I cook 90% of my stuff out of, because I like a year and a half ago or so, when I started helping Karen shoot some of her videos, that's when I had been trying to transition to a plant-based diet for years.
Yeah.
But that's when I got really serious about it, because it's so simple.
User-friendly.
It's so easy for me to make stuff. And I'm not saying that because I work at this place. I actually really like
And
this
very
cookbook.
colorful.
Oh,
you
thank
know,
you.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the rainbow.
I have to really, you know, give kudos. Well, first of all, glory to God, because this was really a labor of love and a passion to get a message out that anybody can do this. if you want to make changes, and this is a great, I like to call this a transitional cookbook, but really it's more than a transitional cookbook because we use this at the Lifestyle Center. And so it's really therapeutic as well, and we're looking for that. And so it's not just like that first step, okay, just take this out of your diet. But it gives you the option of having foods that you would have a familiarity with or a taste for, or all this. This on the front cover, we use the barbecue jackfruit sandwich with a citrus cilantro slaw. That's a great,
It's so colorful.
Like a great lunch.
It's
something,
a very American dish.
Yeah, like a barbecue. I'm not from the South originally, but I live here now. So barbecue is a big thing in the South, right? So to do things like that and just find foods that you can love and enjoy them, but they can also resonate with you because they have a familiarity, like eating that sandwich at that barbecue, you know what I mean, or whatever.
So we're going to give one of these away to our viewers, and that link to enter that giveaway will be in the description below. Just one more question for you looking at this. I personally have a lot of trouble with gluten. So is this a gluten-friendly book?
Well, yeah, it's very gluten friendly.
Okay.
I have a little over 90 recipes in here, of which 85 are either gluten-free or gluten-free option.
Oh, awesome.
Nice.
So
there's oil-free, there's soy-free,
nut-free,
Something for
oil-free.
everybody.
Yeah.
In fact, when you open up the recipe, I have a little just like a little thing
Like a
that'll say
code.
gluten-free, soy-free, nut-free, oil-free. So you'll know right away. Or maybe they'll say, it might say oil-free optional because you might be able to take out the oil and replace it with nuts or something like that.
Sure.
I give those options because I knew that there were some specifics in certain diets, like a whole food plant-based diet really doesn't want to use too much oil.
Right.
So there is a way. If a lot of soy allergies in the world, nut allergies, and then of course gluten, and sensitivity and celiacs and all that is very, very common. So because of that, I made sure that I put that in there to really, appeal to a whole group of people.
Well,
Okay.
Karen, Danique, thank you so much for coming on the show. For those who may want to find you or reach out, how can they do so? Or watch the show?
So DIY Health on YouTube. The Karen show is called Plant-Based Made Simple. My show is coming out soon in a couple of weeks, the Plant-Based Athlete. So be looking out for that. And on Instagram at Wildwood DIY Health, and healthevangelism.com for the online course, or wildwoodhealth.com for the Lifestyle Center.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow. So, hey, this has been a wealth of information and knowledge. And at the end of the day, we just encourage you to try it. God's way, we know from His word and experience, is the best way. And if we would just allow Him, just give Him the space to work in our lives, we will always be amazed. Thank you so much for watching the show. Please remember to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and share it to someone who may benefit from this information. And we'll see you next week on LED Live.
I love it. I mean, I can't watch enough of it.
The duelist who they say can speak with the spirits. The sins will destroy the commandments forever.
A suspicious list of names prompts an investigation at a local school and concern from parents.
The Death Note is derived from a Japanese animated show.
The girl told authorities she got the idea from a Cartoon Network show.
Mom, it's Mr. Satan. I recognize that voice